Parental alienation is a vicious form of child abuse. Think about the parents that have been turned against their own child or children. Many of them are essentially grieving over the loss of a child who's still alive. And let's be honest, many of these alienators wish you were dead.
Okay, welcome to the first ever episode of the Tell the World Your Story. This is all about parental alienation. It's a very serious topic. I think many of you are aware, and this is where people are going to get their stories out. We're going to share it with the world, raise awareness, and fight towards ending this crime against children and humanity. Today, with me, we have. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that's my maiden name, so yeah, we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Okay. And is it right? You're from Staffordshire.
Yeah.
Staffordshire. Okay. And I don't think we spoke much, did we, beforehand? So I'm not fully aware of how many children you have, their age or anything like that. So why don't you just kind of like tell us a little bit about your children, how old they are, boys, girls, how many you've got?
So I've got four children. I've got two boys and two girls. My eldest is 12. That's Oliver. He's my lad. Then we have Ava. She is 10. She's almost 11 at the end of the month. Archie is 8, and Ruby is 2 tomorrow.
2 tomorrow.
So yeah, she is. Yeah, she's 2 tomorrow. Ruby is living with me at the minute. I have absolutely no access to the other 3. I split from my husband in December. His campaign of alienation sort of started. I left in February with my youngest Ruby, and now have absolutely no contact with the other 3 at all.
Okay, there's a bit of a lag there. Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, tell us a little bit about your relationship with your children before all of this started.
Beforehand,
yeah.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. I did everything for them. They're amazing children. We just had a loving, normal mother-daughter, mother-son relationship. We were always busy, we were laughing, it was just perfect.
Yeah.
And now to go from one extreme to the other with absolutely no explanation is just baffling. Yeah.
So you're not so what stage are you at now with the whole alienation process? Are you reached out to the courts at this point, or?
Yeah, so when I left the home, I left in February. I applied for an emergency hearing. It was in February. I was granted that within 5 days, which was great. The judge ordered a temporary arrangement where I take Ruby for contact with the siblings of my husband and vice versa. Now, within less than an hour after the hearing, I had a message saying that it won't be happening, basically, that the children were devastated at the prospect of having to see their mother, and that it wasn't going to happen, that my husband could not force the children to come and see me. Which again, it was just to even suggest that the children would be devastated at the prospect of having to see me was just absolutely ridiculous. So there was a bit of conversation between my legal representative and his, and I think he had a bit of a telling off, and he brought them for contact the following week, which was great, and it was perfectly normal, just lovely. The following week I had another conversation where he said, "I'm sorry, but they don't want to see you." This is the eldest too, but he apparently continued to force my youngest son Archie, who's 8, to continue to see me. I didn't quite understand why. But that was back in February. I haven't seen Oliver and Ava since February. I haven't seen Archie since May. In May we had the first proper hearing. My ex-husband stopped contact with Archie the week before that hearing, on the grounds that he could not force Archie to come and see me. But every single time that we had contact together was amazing. It was action packed. We did so many activities together. Him and Ruby, we would just do. It was just fun, and you could see his face. He was having fun. He was thoroughly enjoying it. But then, as soon as handover happened again, he would change when my husband arrived. He almost looked scared in a way to be seen to be having a nice time with me. When he'd drop him off, he would be quiet until he would sort of turn around and check that he'd gone before he was able to be normal around me. And then he'd just turn into normal chatterbox Archie that he is, and loving. And the transformation between my ex-husband being there and then Archie being left with me alone was just phenomenal, really. So after the last hearing, the judge ordered a Section 7 report. So we're awaiting that, but unfortunately, we have to wait until November. And my husband has stopped contact with Archie, Oliver, and Ava. Won't even allow a telephone conversation. Won't even allow. He's just basically. He's returning presents and gifts that I've bought the children in the past when I lived with them. He won't give me any information about them. He's just stopped any sort of communication, deeming that the children don't want me to contact them. Whereas where Ruby stands, Ruby is living with me. She did have until last week, 2 days and a night with her dad and her siblings, and I stick to that. I take her for contact. It's important. There's no way that I would break contact with her dad or her siblings. But that's where we are. And I'm in sort of limbo at the minute, because the longer it goes on, the more alienated they're going to get, the more damage is being done. And there's nothing I can do about it.
So how old are the two that are in your care?
I've just got one, Ruby. She's 2 tomorrow.
Oh, sorry. I thought you
yeah.
said there was the other one. Oh, but he went back.
Yeah. So on the final day that I had contact with Archie, so we went swimming and having a great time. And he was so keen to show him. He was getting more and more confident in the pool. He's never been a brilliant swimmer, but we've been doing regular sessions, and you could just see his confidence improving. And he was beaming until we got into the changing room, and he went really quiet and nervous looking. And he said to me, "Mom, I want to stop these contact sessions." And I said, "Why? Like, why, Archie?" And he just went really quiet, and he couldn't answer me. And he went really red in the face and looked really nervous. And I said, "Archie, is somebody telling you to say this? Please tell me." And he just went really quiet and didn't say anything. Anyway, we got dressed and got back in the car, ready to take him home to his dad. Driving home, there was an ad that came on the radio station for Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And Archie said to me, "Mom, can we go and see this next week?" I said, "Yeah, of course, I'll sort some tickets." And it was almost like he'd got telling me over and done with, like he'd been programmed to say that. And then he thought, "Oh, it's done now. We can go back to normal." And I said, "Yeah, of course." And the following day, I had a message from my husband saying, "Archie's informed me that he's told you he doesn't want to see you anymore. Obviously, I cannot force him to come and see you anymore." So the way it was put, it was clear he'd been sort of programmed to say that, sort of coached into behaving in a certain way. it doesn't make any sense.
I think as parents, we can always identify those moments, those changes in our children, their mannerisms and their character. It's almost,
Absolutely.
you know, I myself have always kind of acknowledged those things whenever me and I can't say too much, but just you just know, you know, it's kind of like they turn into some kind of robot and they kind
Yeah,
of like mimic, or they just kind of like repeat something, and then kind of like moments after, it's kind of like they're themselves again, you know. Um, and they're just red flags. They're just clear red
yeah,
flags of parental alienation.
massively. And I mean, initially when I first moved out, I got in contact with social services because I was concerned that the children were being coerced.
Mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, they sent somebody that just wasn't qualified to look for these signs. All the signs were there in their report. It came back that she spoke to all the children individually, but they all said exactly the same thing. You know, to me, that's a massive red flag that they're being coerced into saying they've been sort of programmed to say a certain thing before they'd had this interview with this lady. Also, they were just awful about me, making up lies, things that were just the most horrific things that weren't true.
Mhm.
And that's not natural for a child to just turn on their mother in that
Yeah.
way. But they were all doing it, all three of them individually. Yet that this lady from social services came, she came back with a report. Oh no, the children are clearly happy living with their dad. They don't want anything to do with mom. There's nothing more we can do here. My sort of legal representative said basically that it was just a farce. The report was a farce. It was thrown out of court because the judge agreed. And actually, in the last hearing, I'm using a Mackenzie friend. He had a chat with my ex-husband solicitor, who went and had a chat with Kafkas prior to the hearing, and my ex-husband's own. So whether it's a waiting game now, but whether that will hold any sort of I don't know. I have no faith really
Well, it's
in
hard.
this,
It's hard.
but it's I just fear the worst. Because I was let down by social services, I fear that Kafkas are going to do the same thing.
Almost as if they're kind of like one and the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are the grandparents about?
So my family, so my ex-husband is an only child,
Yeah.
and his parents didn't really have anything to do with the children for the past 12 years. They'd not been around to our house in the past 11 years. Never made an effort to see them. It was always when we could be bothered to take them round, they would put up with them basically for about half an hour.
Yeah.
Never took them out for the day. They were always almost too much trouble.
Yeah.
Yet my family were there for the children all the time. They loved them. They spend time with them. They'd look after them. Now, role reverse. The children now no longer want anything to do with my family. And the paternal grandparents have almost completely stepped up. Now there's an agenda. They're now going for sleepovers. They're picking them up from school. They are grandparents of the year.
Yeah.
Since 2022. They've been grandparents for the past 12 and a half years, but the past 6 months, they've been wonderful.
Now they're actually being grandparents.
Yeah.
It's a shame. So, do you have representation? Have you got somebody who you're working with?
Yeah, he's brilliant. I'm using a Mackenzie friend, but to be honest, he's a lot more. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's just a time scale, isn't it? I know we have another hearing in November, but it's what's going on in the meantime? I've got no access to the children. I can't even speak to them. And Kafkas are in no rush. I know they're overworked or not enough staff, but it's not good enough.
No. Well, it's definitely not good enough when children are involved. When it comes to children,
No.
That they're always quick to go out and um, address other issues, but when it comes to children, I feel like there's something missing.
Yeah.
I feel like there's no real urgency to truly take care of the children, to truly put their real needs first. It's almost as if people in the system, people that have the power, the professionals. It's almost as if they kind of don't quite understand that a child's experience affects their adult life.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm sure many people are aware that, or if they're not, they're going to be now, the parental alienation leads children down the path to, things like drug abuse and self-harm, feeling isolated and lonely, having self-hate or self-loathing, just a whole host of different mental, psychological issues. It's almost as if that's just kind of seem to be normal, not normal, but kind of like, oh well, it's just the way that adults go, it's just the way that people's lives go, and they don't really connect the dots. They don't really understand that it's the family disconnect, it's the war between families that's causing all of this from the get-go, from the beginning.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
kind of like brushed under the rug, and they kind of like deal with it in a different way. I mean, that's one of the things that I wish to do with my work, and that's bring that to light, and that's really kind of like get that out there, and get people to realize that there is a connection there. And all of these adults, not all of these adults, but so many adults walking around today who are lost, suffering from whatever it is, and many of them, it stems from their childhood. Broken families, parental alienation, child abuse, domestic violence, all of that sort of stuff that kind of happens around the family unit all too commonly these days. It's like rolling thunder. It just continues to go, and then we just have a society plagued with struggling adults. And I guess that's kind of what I want to do is really focus on that kind of aspect. It's not going to be easy, obviously, because there are already people out there doing it. But you can never have too many people fighting for the cause,
No, definitely not. And I think the court almost say it's okay, it's not. They don't see the urgency.
Yeah.
It needs to be stopped before it can go any further. And unfortunately, it's the process is that slow. And that's if justice is served at the end of it. I mean, for many people, it's not. And I have no idea what the conclusion is going to be like in my situation. But it's the longer it goes on, the worse it gets.
Absolutely.
When really I think if they made the consequences more severe, then maybe the alienating parent might think twice about their behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I know it's a difficult one. It's a very complicated and complex issue, because I do get that there are cases out there. We see it in the news. We hear about it often. Not that the news is ever to be trusted, but we do hear about it. We hear cases of the abusing parent somehow kind of like having it flipped, and having the alienated parent seem to be the liar, etc., getting the children back, and then abusing the children. So the abuser ends up with the control, and that's what we're seeing. So I understand, it's hard for the system to kind of address that, but that doesn't mean that they cannot make parental alienation a crime punishable by law if it was investigated.
Yeah, it needs thorough investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what baffles me, is the fact that they don't really have it written. It's not really written in law. It's not even in legislation. It's nothing. It's recognized. You know, they kind of, it's like there in the background, but they don't. I mean, yeah, I feel like if they were to write it in law, it's a crime. Parental alienation is a crime punishable by law in a court of law, and obviously dependent on the seriousness of it, the level of it would depend on the seriousness of the crime and the punishment. You know, so
Yeah.
not in every case a person would go to prison. You know, severe cases they would. You know, where the child has been. You know, there is a distinct difference between the child from that moment to that moment, and they have been psychologically damaged. Then you know, I believe that to be as serious, you know, as up there, because you've just then changed a tiny human being's complete psychological mindset, and that's gonna impact their future. So I think if it gets to that kind of level, then that's when you're talking prison time. I'm not saying for years or whatever, but there needs to be something there that's going to have
Yeah.
these abusers put on notice.
Otherwise, they think they can get away with it. I mean, I was told, like, after the last hearing, my youngest son Archie, he's 8, came running out of school to his dad, saying, "Did we win?" After the hearing. So what is he saying to him? It's shocking.
Yeah.
And parents shouldn't be allowed to get away with that. They shouldn't be allowed to drag children through conversation like that. I mean, I have no idea what he'd said for Archie to say that to him, but
Yeah.
it's horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Yeah.
So how far away
And,
how far away do you live from them?
5 miles, if that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's roughly about the same length of time for me, my eldest. I mean, it feels like a lifetime, doesn't it? It feels like a lifetime ago that you've seen them or spoke to
Yeah.
them. I couldn't imagine. So do they have aunts and uncles? Are there other family members about? Are they aware? What are their thoughts and feelings of all this?
So I've got 2 sisters, so they've got 2 aunties. The family really on my side, because my ex is an only child. There's just him and his 2 parents.
Yeah.
They're sort of quite loners, really, so they don't really have any outside friends or other family coming in. It's just them. Whereas my family are a little bit more sociable. The children have always been involved with them,
Mm.
but they have now withdrawn from my family completely. In my sister and my sister's daughter sent Archie and Ava invitations to her birthday party. They all attend the same school,
Yeah.
and my ex handed them back to me with "no thank you" written on the bottom, on both of them. One was written by Ava, the other one was written by Archie, but it said exactly the same thing on both invitations. They've also withdrawn from some mutual friends that we had that still speak to me. Have invited, like, the children over when they've got children similar ages. They've withdrawn from friends that have communication with me as well. So it's not just me; it's affecting a wider circle of people as well.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah. It's kind of I mean, I feel like even that is just a clear kind of red flag. If the children
yeah,
are withdrawing and disconnecting from the entire family, I feel like, you know, there's definitely something else going on behind closed doors. I mean, I don't know, you know, I'm not too clued up as to too many. Like, I don't really know, you know, how these things really work when it comes to the real cases where there are genuine abusive parents that have been, you know, distanced from the children, and that the children are actually in the care of the genuine, loving, caring, supportive parent. I don't know kind of like how it works in terms of, you know, do children in them situations reject and distance themselves from the rest of the family, or is it just the abusive, you know, parent that they disconnect from? I mean, it'd be interesting to talk, you know, maybe with I mean, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean,
It'll be it's interesting to see, actually, wouldn't it, for genuine abuse victims, and whether they do withdraw from wider circles or whether it's just
the parent, the abusive
yeah.
parent. Yeah. Yeah. So it's all very early days. It's still quite early days for you, but it's
Feels like a lifetime.
yeah. I mean, it drags. You know, every day. You know, you kind of wake with that anxiety and that. You know, and you just kind of like it's hard to really see hope. It's hard to see anything happening. And we know that these things can take a long time because I've spoken with people and they've spent years and years and years doing this. I couldn't imagine doing that, to be totally honest. I mean, I'm in a process now where I've been given the go ahead to go and find contact centres to see my eldest, but that seems to be a nightmare in itself. So yeah. Did you try mediation? Did you?
Yeah. So I applied for an emergency court hearing without mediation due to domestic abuse, psychological abuse. But in between the emergency hearing and the first hearing, my ex-husband asked to go to mediation. So I thought, okay, you know, I'll go. The mediator, it was remote, so it was via Teams, I think it was. And the mediators asked me how I felt about it, and I said, quite pessimistic, if I'm honest, because my ex is, I don't like using the term, but he's a narcissist, and he will not negotiate. He will, unless something is his idea, his control, he will not listen at all. So the mediators, anyway, they carried on with the meeting in separate rooms. I was all for, despite what he's put me through, I was all for 50-50 custody of the children, because I think that's the best scenario for any children, is to spend half the time with the mother, half the time with the father, and we co-parent in the best way we can. And that was my stance on things. But he said no, absolutely not. He wanted me to hand over my daughter 5 days and 5 nights a week, for me to just have her for 2 nights, and the other children didn't want to see me at all. So unless I bowed down to his demands, he wasn't interested in negotiating whatsoever, which was, the mediators just turned around to me and said, look, I'm sorry, we really can't help you. And that was it. It was a pointless exercise. But you can't negotiate with somebody like that. No. It's impossible. Yeah. So it was, thrown out, and then we went back to court. And I think that's the best way. We leave it in the hands of the court, because he's just a control freak, unfortunately. I can't even have a conversation with him. It's I
can relate. Sadly. I think many people watching this, many people out there are going to be able to relate to most, all of it. You know.
Yeah.
It's a mess that you involuntarily get dragged into, and you know, it's like I said earlier in a little video that I put up. You know, we shouldn't have to do this. We should be enjoying our lives with our children and our family and our loved ones. You know, we don't have much time on this earth. It's very limited, and tomorrow is not promised. You know, you know, just imagine for a second You know, there's a situation, parental alienation. You know, a mother or a father hasn't seen their child for X amount of time. You know, anything can happen, and God forbid, you know, a tragic accident happens to this loving and committed, caring parent. You know, imagine what that's going to do to the child. Like if
Yeah.
you know, it's not something that you play games with. It's not you know a tit for tat. It's not I don't like you, so this is what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to use your child. Uh, it's unfathomable, but it happens, and yeah, I just I hope I pray for you. You know, and I'll be here to support as much as I can with you know what I've got, and I appreciate you coming to tell your story. I'm sure you've got a long way to go. I hope you haven't, but you just never know. So
Yeah, I imagine I'm prepared for the worst, unfortunately.
yeah,
I
I
think
think it's kind of I think it's inevitable for a lot of people that they are going to do that because you know yeah it's we see it happen. You know, we see a lot of I've spoken to many people and they some have gone a decade without seeing their kids. You know, especially I find that from what I've heard, people in America and Australia they've got it so much worse than we have over here.
oh, really?
The system is so much harder to crack. You know, states all work differently, and yeah. So you know, we just got to keep fighting as much as we can. You know,
Yeah, I won't stop.
no,
No, I owe it to the kids that they don't know what's happening.
no,
Unfortunately, I think I was easily manipulated for a long time. I was with Max for 14 years, and if you could do that to me, it's not going to be hard to do it to children, is it? It's yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm just going to thank you for stepping forward. It takes courage and guts to put yourself out there and want to tell your story. Um, you know, if any updates you have or any progress, be great to hear of it when it happens. Um, but yeah, I like to think that you know getting these stories out, it's going to help a lot of people. You know, it's going to make them feel, I guess, a bit more, you know, not relaxed, but less
Not
alone.
alone. Yeah, you're not alone. It's unfortunately something that's happening everywhere, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
people choose to accept it though, and I think people shouldn't have to.
no, no. Well, I think you're awesome. I think you're a great person. We haven't spoke much, but you know, I can tell that you love your kids, and it's genuine, it's true, it's pure, and I can relate to that. So, bless you and thank you for coming forward. Unfortunately, these I need to upgrade my Zoom, which apparently I wasn't aware of because I only get a certain amount of time on here, which is actually frustrating. So I'm gonna probably have to upgrade because we've got like 3 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it came up a minute ago telling me that I've got like 10 minutes, so I've got an upgrade. Well, there's a learning curve for you.
Oh, I'm a technophobe, so I have no idea what to do.
Yeah, but no, again, thank you. This is going to be the first of many stories that we get out there. And like I said, it takes courage to come forward and put yourself out there and tell your story, knowing that, you know, people out there, um, you know, so thank you. I do appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and yeah, and we'll have a little chat, and yeah, and we'll look to get this video out there.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
You take care.
Parental alienation
Andrew.
is a vicious form of child abuse. Think about the parents that have been turned against their own child or children. Many of them are essentially grieving over the loss of a child who's still alive. And let's be honest, many of these alienators wish you were dead.